Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Bayou Bets for Thursday, March the 9th. I'm Zach Ewing with Jim Derry, and we've got a good show for you today. We've got some, hell yeah, we do. We've got some NFL quarterback news, how that's impacting the futures odds in the NFL.
Yeah.
We've got Zion Williamson news, which is not good news, but we can talk about it. You took issue with the name of this show, Jim. Is Zion
very much
Williamson
so.
a bust?
I mean, it's not even the first thing we're talking about. We're just trying to piss people off.
We'll get into that. No, I'm just trying to piss you off. That's what this is.
Well, it worked.
All right, dumb. So we got Jim fired up. People are asking the question, though. It's not just me. People are asking the question: is Zion a bust? I'm not saying the answer is yes.
Are they the same people that are asking if Derek Carr was the right solution for the Saints? Because they're the same morons, probably.
They might be the same people. Yes, actually, I am not saying that the answer is yes, but I am saying that people are asking that question. So we're not going to start there, though. Segment. We are going to start with NFL quarterbacks, and we're also going to start with the news that, of course, we are brought to you by Caesars Sportsbook. And if you sign up for Caesars Sportsbook, you can get 3 free LSU football posters, or I think we actually have some Saints options in there too. You get to pick 3 out. It's a $90 value. It's yours for free. Just all you have to do is sign up for Caesars, make a minimum of a $10 bet. You might win the bet. You might actually get paid to get these posters. And even if you don't, you're going to get the posters, a $90 value for free. So go to lsuposter.com for that.
I thought it was zionasabust.com.
That's a different URL. I just reserved that one today, actually.
Okay,
haven't built it up yet. Yeah, but hey, where we're going to start? Yeah, where we're going to start, Jim, is with the NFL quarterback carousel. Of course, the Saints got off of the ride on Monday this week, and that was with Derek Carr, signing Derek Carr, and it's, I have to say, as a person who follows the Saints professionally, and I would imagine for Saints fans as well, it's kind of nice to not be spinning on that carousel right now.
Absolutely. I mean, that's part of the whole thing, right? I mean, they had to get off that train. And, I saw some dummies talking about tanking again last night. They should have tanked. I mean, that's the dumbest thing ever. I mean, look, the only way the Saints are going to get better anytime soon is to get a real quarterback. Now, it presents a cap problem, but hey, they're off that schneid, I guess, and now they can focus their attention to the next places they need help, and we'll get to that in this show.
Yeah, and I mean, in the meantime, the rest of these quarterbacks, like the big news, of course, Aaron Rodgers is on the market. He's met with the New York Jets. Their futures odds have nosedived, by the way. They're now, I think, 14-1 to win the Super Bowl. And so these sports books, you can see, are terrified of getting caught by the news that Aaron Rodgers signed with the Jets, and a few people hitting big dollars on Jets at 30-1. And so now they're already down. We don't even know if he's going to sign there, but they're already all the way down there.
Yeah, I was kind of looking at where this was going to go a couple of weeks ago, and I said I like to buy one future early, like now. And so before I realized everybody else in that grandma was on the Jets, I'm like, it's a good time to get on the Jets, and it happened to be. I mean, I got value. I got 30-1, and the other 20-1, and so I did get value. I forgot to ask, did you put the poll question results in here?
I do have the poll results, and so let's show those now, because
I was kind of surprised at the results, to be honest.
Yeah, I was too. Derek Carr signs with the Saints. Our poll question on Monday was, will Derek Carr win a playoff game? And actually, the way you phrased it, I believe, Jim, was, will he win a playoff game in the 2023-24 season, like next season? Which obviously, that's probably the most likely year for him to do it. But I think it's a fair question. Will he, in his Saints tenure overall, which could be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 6 years, we don't know. But people are optimistic. 79.5% of people. We had almost 600 responses as of this morning, and 79.5% say yes, Derek Carr will win a playoff game in New Orleans.
There have been 4 more votes since then. I happen to be looking at it currently, and the 119 has not changed. The yes has changed to 466. So pretty much
we got to be close to 80.
Yeah. 80-20, which surprises me, because I really thought I didn't think I got to say, I've been educated a little bit on maybe Saints fans aren't as dumb as I thought they were. Maybe it's just the no's were louder than the yeses. Well, that's certainly true. But it
Yeah,
seems
vocal
like
minority for sure.
yeah, it seems like most people are happy that Derek Carr is here as the Saints quarterback. I mean, you got to remind people Drew Brees is gone and he's never coming back. And so that's people, you can't compare any quarterback that's available or what this team has had or what they're going to have to Drew Brees because he's really, as far as a franchise goes, more likely than not, he's a once in a lifetime type quarterback. And you're never going to see the likes of him again. I mean, how often does a franchise see a Hall of Fame quarterback play for them? It only happens, once or twice in a lifetime. I mean, so to be realistic, that's where the Saints are. And so to get a Derek Carr, probably not a Hall of Famer, but he's certainly a team that can lead you to the playoffs. And we have seen in the past, we have seen teams that come from middle of the pack seeds and going to the Super Bowl. And so I think the Saints have talent, depending on what they do in the draft, and we're going to get to that in a little bit. But I think the Saints have talent to be a playoff team next year with a real quarterback. They have some other help that they need to get, and so Derek Carr, obviously. But as far as this question goes, Zach, I know where you kind of brought it up, but where the Saints are ahead of everyone else in their division is the other three teams are either A, looking for a quarterback, or B, have one but completely unsure on him. Like Atlanta, is Atlanta going to stick with Desmond Ridder? All three of the other NFC South teams are in a world of hurt when it comes to quarterback right now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, I think when you look at the source of that optimism, that's got to be number one on the list. I will say this. I think I would have expected 80-20 if it was, will the Saints make the playoffs, because of what you said. Like, they should make the playoffs. That division is terrible.
Yeah.
But and as you see in the odds in the market here, Saints to make playoffs -162. They're better than even money, well better than even money to make the playoffs. But the question of whether they can win a game when they get there, that really seems to be the rub. And that's what a lot of people say is, well, we could win this division, sure, but we're not going to do anything. Why would we do that? Let's just tank. Which, as we've covered, is just ignorant. That tanking was never going to be the plan. It never could have been the plan.
Shouldn't be the plan for any team. Not in March or even August. I mean, it should never be the plan of any team to tank. I mean, look at the Seattle Seahawks last year. Who in their right mind would have thought Seattle was going to win more? I mean, their win total going into the season, I think, was 5.5. It might have been 6. But who in their right minds would have thought Seattle was going to go to the playoffs? So they could have easily said, you know what, we're going to tank. And, I mean, they would have been wrong to say so. But they didn't take that angle. And Geno Smith turned out to be better than almost anyone, including Geno Smith's mama, probably thought Geno Smith could be. And the Seahawks,
maybe even Geno Smith.
Yeah, maybe even Geno Smith himself. And the Seahawks turned out to be a pretty decent football team and went to the playoffs. By the way, the Saints beat them. Just goes to show that what they had the capabilities of. It should have beat the Cincinnati Bengals for that matter. So you can't go into a season thinking negative. You just can't. I mean, you can call it as you see them and say, like you're watching Major League and this team still stinks. I'll use stinks instead of the word that they use on the movie. But you never know. So and I think the Saints are ahead of the game right now. And of these numbers, look, if you like the Saints to make the playoffs, maybe you could have put a couple bucks on them to win the NFC at plus 1,400, because if they make the playoffs, you got to win 3 games to get to the Super Bowl if you don't get that bye. So, hey, 14-1 to win 3 games. Who knows?
Yeah,
that number's not going to go down. By the way, it's not going to go down. None of these numbers are going to go down.
I don't think I'm betting on the Saints to make the Super Bowl or anything like that.
I'm not telling you
to. I am generally optimistic. I'll put it that way.
I don't think there's any value on this board. You don't have NFC South, which earlier in the week was plus 130.
And I saw plus 135 this morning. So
I think
maybe
there's
even
value
a little
there.
More value.
That's where there's value to me. Plus 130 to win the South. And I would do that now. That number, again, is not going to go down. I think these other numbers will stay pretty stagnant. I don't think they're going to move much until August or September, but, is what it is. I think the best value is the Saints to win the NFC South, because I think they're the best team in the NFC South right now.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree with that. I do think it's a little bit early to do any of that, just simply because we don't know what those other teams are going to do. If you had to guess, who ends up playing quarterback? Let's say in Tampa Bay, because I think Atlanta is going to run Ritter back.
How about Jimmy Garoppolo? That would be an interesting scenario. How about Jameis Winston? That's a possibility. I think Jameis ends up either in Carolina or Tampa Bay. I don't think you would have any qualms going back to Tampa Bay. And I could see Frank Reich saying, you know what? Sean Payton saw something in Jameis Winston. Frank Reich's a former quarterback like Sean Payton. Hey, let's see what we got. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Jameis Winston in this division at all. So one of those two places is my guess. I got a feeling that Atlanta's going to end up sticking with Desmond Ridder, and if they do, they're going to be in for a rough season, in my opinion. But we'll see how that goes. It's hard to give up on a guy you drafted that early after 1 year. So I don't think
he wasn't disastrous.
No, he wasn't. And they should have played him to start the season, in my opinion. But again, it goes to teams saying, you know what, we're not going to tank. We think our best chance to win is Marcus Mariota, and that's what they did. They may just have hung on a little bit too long to Mariota.
Yeah, it's a tough situation. I mean, I think for every team in the NFC South, the Panthers are the one team. You know, if you can trade up and maybe you get a C.J. Stroud, a Bryce Young. Yeah. I mean, I know you and I don't like Will Levis, but some people do. Maybe he's a guy who nobody thought could be successful, but he is. I
hope these mocks showing him going to Carolina are true, because that's I don't think he's gonna be anything.
My point is, maybe you can catch lightning in a bottle if you're Carolina. Tampa Bay and Atlanta are in much more difficult situations.
For sure. But look, I don't know that right now. I think the Saints, barring something crazy in free agency or just an outstanding draft, I mean, I don't see anyone passing the Saints right now. I mean, Tampa Bay probably has the most talent, but they have a horrendous coaching staff.
Well, and news came out today that they're shopping Devin White. So they look like they may.
They've got some free agents. Yeah, they've got some free agents. So I think the Saints the clear cut best team in the NFC South. Whether that means they win it, but at plus 130 or plus 135, there's definitely value there right now. And again, I think as time goes on in the next couple months, you're going to see that number go down to plus 110 ish.
Jim, we're still about 6 weeks away from the draft, 7 weeks away from the draft. Mm-hmm. What do you see the Saints doing before then? They still have a few moves they need to make to get under the cap. Will they sign any other significant free agents, do you think? I'm
not sure that they're going to be able to. Got to get under the cap first, and then you can figure it out from there. But they're kind of in a bind right now, and I need to see what they're going to do cap-wise. Ask me again next Thursday, because I think the deadline is, 4 days from now, 5 days from now?
Yeah, I think it's Wednesday, the 15th.
Okay, so and on Thursday's show, we'll be able to talk more about that probably.
Yeah. All right, so I think it is time to move on to the topic du jour, which is Zion Williamson. Zion Williamson out for longer than expected. Where have we heard that before?
Not longer than expected.
And it comes.
How many people really expected it? Hello, Jerry.
I mean, I know you did. Jerry's here, yeah, and finally the Pelicans won. But look, the Pelicans beat the Mavericks.
Getting myself ready.
They were 2.5 point underdogs. It was a win they needed. C.J. McCollum played well. Brandon Ingram left with an injury, by the way. Jim, you've been the one all season long who says Zion's not coming back for a long time. Expect this to last the rest of the regular season, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, you've basically proven to be right at this point. If he comes back in the regular season, it's going to be for the last half a dozen games, maybe.
I said it in early January.
So you've been proven right on that. So my question is, we were meeting earlier about this, and Zoe, our producer, said, look, Zion's a bust. He is the B word. He is a bust. That riled you up a little bit.
Yeah, it still riles me up. I mean, how can you call a 22-year-old player in any sport, anywhere, a bust? That's the most absurd thing. Well, no, it's not the most absurd thing I've heard this week is the Saints should tank. But this is up there. I mean, you can't call a 22-year-old kid a bust. I mean, yeah, he's had injury problems. He has not been on the court for even half of a season yet. But that doesn't mean he's a bust. I mean, let's Let's figure out what's going to happen going forward. As we said in the pre-production meeting, going forward, what would the Pels say if they could get, and maybe they can or maybe they can't, but you talk about a guy who, if he could play 60 games, would automatically make this team a top 4 or 5 team in the West without question. So
that's what's so frustrating about it. Because when he's on the court, he's magical. Yeah.
Of course it's frustrating. It's definitely frustrating. And fans, unrealistic fans who don't understand how things work are automatically, it's the same people who said Derek Carr shouldn't be signed. I get the frustration. It's okay to be frustrated. I'm sure the Pelicans are frustrated, but you can't call a 22-year-old a bust. If let's say he comes back the next 2 years and plays the next 2 years and plays 60, 70 games and the Pels go to the semifinals, are we going to be thinking about him being a bust? I mean, no. So, let's wait a little bit. Now, if he were 26, 28, and he's going through 7, 8 seasons and, look at a guy like AD. AD never makes it through an entire season. He misses. When's the last time AD played 65, 70 games in a season? Nobody's calling him a bust.
Well,
he might call him a bum.
Look, Zion's been in the league for 4 years. He's played 113 games. That's obviously less than 30 games per year. That includes a year he missed completely, but that counts. That matters. It also includes the COVID year where they lost some games because of that, but only a handful of them. So to answer your question, by the way, Anthony Davis last season with more than 65 games was his second to last year in New Orleans. He played 75. So the most he's played.
Something.
He did play 62 games for his first year in the Lakers, and that was the COVID year. So 62, that's more than 90% of the game. So I think we have to count that as well.
I agree. But look, to Lloyd's question, how does it take a 22-year-old player 4 months to heal from a hamstring? First of all, it's 2 months. So let's not exaggerate things. It happened in early January, and we're in early March. So it's been 2 months. Second of all, how do you know what kind of hamstring injury he has?
I don't understand that.
How does
basketball
Kendrick
is
Perkins
sprinting?
How does anybody know? No one knows how bad if anyone that's had a bad hamstring injury, they last significant amounts of time. And we haven't talked about this. We don't know if behind the scenes, and this is absolutely possible, that the Pelicans are saying behind the scenes, you know what? After he missed a month, and they maybe he's ready. We're bordering on the play-in game. How much do we want to take a chance on our future? And I know that they've done this in the past, but we don't know how much the team is involved in this. It may be the team's decision as much as anyone's. 8 weeks for a hamstring injury, you can go in the NFL and see players with hamstring injuries that miss 8 weeks of a season. It happens often.
I'm not sure that I understand why the Pelicans would do that, given their position in the standings.
Because why would they? More. I'm not saying this is the case, but they have been more guarded with this kid than. Remember when he was out forever the first time, and he came back, and they would only let him play the first 2 minutes of a quarter, and it
was ridiculous.
I agree, it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous,
and it's time to stop that.
I don't disagree with that, but I'm just saying I don't think there's enough putting that into the equation that certainly could be the case. And we don't know what's going on back there. If that's the case, but
Lloyd says his point that it's more than a hamstring. I don't know.
Regardless, whatever the case, no matter the reason why, to call a 22-year-old kid who is a potential Hall of Fame player, and that's what he is, he's a potential Hall of Fame player, a bust at this age is incredibly absurd.
Let's put a finer point on it, because here's the question as we talked about it earlier. If you could go back to that 2020 NBA draft, 2018 NBA draft, and 2019 NBA draft, and get that number one pick again, and go and tell the Pelicans, for the first 4 years, Zion he's gonna miss a tremendous amount of games. He's barely gonna play a third of the games. For the first 4 years. Now, I don't know what happens after that, but I hopped in my DeLorean, I went back there, and I told David Griffin, does David Griffin pick somebody else? And my answer to that question is yes, he picks John Morant. I don't think there's anybody else he would pick over Zion, but I think he would take John Morant.
I think you don't understand this franchise if you believe that. I'm not saying what the right answer would be. I would probably still take Zion and knowing if I know the first 4, I got a crystal ball for 4 years, but I don't know what happens beyond that. I would still take Zion because I think when Zion can play, he's going to be better than anyone in this league. That's what I think. So, but knowing the Saints and the Pelicans organization, because let's face facts, it's the same organization. I know David Griffin is running the Pelicans, but back behind the scenes is Mickey Loomis. I mean, I know how this organization works, and going back in time and doing the same, being in the same situation and knowing what you know now, they would still take Zion Williamson because that's who they are. And I think if you look at if you would have taken anyone else but Zion Williamson besides that at the time, you'd have been ridiculed across. You'd have been a laughingstock of the NBA. So first of all, you could never do that anyway. What are you going to say? Well, I'm going to get back in my DeLorean and go back to 2023.
I mean, there is that.
I'm telling you what you see now. Trust me, he's going to get hurt, and we'll let Memphis deal with that problem. Now,
logically, it breaks down. I understand that. But the thought exercise is if you could go back and say, hey, the guy's only going to play 113 games in his first 4 seasons, including missing an entire year, which, by the way, is the only year, at least out of the first 3, that you make the playoffs.
I mean, you also have to look that Brandon Ingram was hurt in the beginning of the season, and that didn't help any.
No.
So, I mean, and look at Zion was carrying a team by himself for a month and a half to 2 months. So, no, I mean, I think John Morant's a great player, and I'll hope he gets out of this issue that he's in right now. He obviously needs some kind of help. But, I mean, so there. You go back in your DeLorean, you're going to take John Morant, who obviously has some kind of issues.
Who's going to take a video of himself with a gun in a nightclub like an idiot. I get that. Like, there's no perfect pick, and I think
right. And to me, so Zion is to me the closest.
The ceiling of Zion is still so tantalizing, right? Like that's what this comes down to. So
it is incredibly high.
He's just. But again, we talk about Michael Thomas. We've talked about Zion. We talked about Brandon Ingram and his toe. What's going on with the medical staff down there on Airline Drive?
That's a topic that we can get into in the summer because that's definitely a topic we should talk about.
We could talk a whole show about that. Yeah.
We kind of have before, but we definitely need to talk about that for sure.
All right, we'll move on for now. And the LSU men, speaking of basketball, they beat Georgia last night, held them off 72-67 was the final.
Should have been 72-69.
So that was the funny part. Georgia had a putback at the end that they waved off, and everyone sort of thought, "Oh, that's not important." It was LSU. Well, the line was LSU -3 for most of the day. Right. I think it closed at 2.5, but that was very significant.
I wonder if anyone knew that.
Yours truly.
Wonder if anyone knew that.
I'm sure I'm sure somebody did. Trey, going back to Zion, says, "Of course he's not a bust. Not yet. No, I don't think the answer is that he is yet. In 2 years, if he's still only playing a third of the games, maybe we revisit this.
We can revisit it, but revisit it in context. Don't tell me what's going to happen for the next 2 years. Let's just see what happens, then come back and talk to me.
All right, that's fair. LSU tonight plays. Okay, they say 8 p.m. It's going to be more like 8:30.
It's actually officially 8:30 on the SEC's website.
Okay, the ESPN said 8, but
they're wrong.
Anyway, it's after the first game. Arkansas plays Auburn at 6, and 25 minutes after that game ends, LSU will play Vanderbilt. So it could be anywhere between 8:15 and 8. And
I think it started at like 8:45 last night.
Yeah, it could start even later than that. So, but that is the game. Vandy -4.5. Jim, you took LSU in our best bets tonight.
I did. Look, they beat him already. Boy, it seems that Lloyd and I. Wait a minute. Is that Kyle? Is that really Kyle? I think Kyle's using some.
No, I don't think so.
You sure?
Lloyd's more reasonable than that. Come on.
All right. I did take LSU. I like the way they played last night. They played like they care, which is not always something you can say about a 14 seed. They've already beaten this Vanderbilt team that honestly I don't think is all that great. I mean, it depends. Vanderbilt is a little bit like Mizzou in the fact, Zach, you've watched a lot of Mizzou games this year. I don't mean it in a bad way. If they get hot, they're tough to beat. They're well coached. I think Jerry Stackhouse is a wonderful coach. But Vanderbilt, they are on the bubble, so they really need this game. So that kind of goes against what we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I like LSU tonight. I think LSU is going to fight hard. I think it's going to be a tight game, and we'll see what happens.
I'm not betting this game. This line is way too tight to where I think it should be. I've got Vandy
Right.
by
That's my
4 or
point.
5
It
in
ought
this
to be
game,
like
so.
7.5.
No, I'm saying I don't think it should be. I think this is about right. The LSU and Vanderbilt have had two of the strangest seasons you'll ever see.
Yeah, they really have.
We know about LSU. They started 12-1. They their only loss was to Kansas State, who's like a top 4 seed in the tournament.
Yep.
They had beat they beat Arkansas. Then they went to Kentucky and gave them a game and lost. And that was the start of losing 17 out of 18. 17 losses in 18 games for LSU. The one win in that stretch, the only win out of 18 games, was against Vanderbilt. Meanwhile, Vanderbilt has won 8 of its last 9 games, and that was the one loss. So how does that happen? And it wasn't even a close game. I mean, LSU won that game by 7 points or 8 points. It was not in doubt in the final minute. So
if you combine the margin of loss to Alabama for Vanderbilt and LSU, it adds up to 97.
Wow, I was going to guess 100. Yeah, it's
Right
Alabama
on.
has thumped both. I think they're both glad they don't have the Crimson Tide next. Whoever wins this game
really.
gets Kentucky in Friday
Beatable.
night's final quarterfinal.
Either team that wins tonight has a chance to win in the quarterfinals.
It is amazing. It is amazing how LSU, as poor of a season as they've had, and as how everything that can go wrong has gone wrong, they have a reasonable path. I'm not saying it's going to happen. It's still probably 20-1. But it's at least reasonable to get all the way to the SEC tournament final.
Think about it, though.
Nobody scares you down there.
A year ago at this time, none of these kids, coaches, or anyone on the staff knew any of the others except for Matt McMahon and KJ Williams. None of them knew any of the other ones. They had to rebuild an entire team. And so, look, I'm not saying they've done a great job, but I have trust in Matt McMahon. I think he's going to be a good coach. And I wish KJ Williams had another year because he's a phenomenal player. He really is. So we'll see what happens. But look, it's a rough start. But as you said, LSU more than had a chance to win probably 6, 7, maybe even 8 other games, and they just couldn't hang on. They let games slip away. They easily could have been NIT material this year, easily. And they just didn't happen that way. I wouldn't want to play them right now.
I mean, I'd rather play them than a lot of other teams.
I'd rather play them than Kentucky. I still think this season Texas A&M. But as far as they're not a 14 seed. Put it that way.
I think that the that the season probably ends tonight. But like I said, I mean, Vandy's not unbeatable. Kentucky's not unbeatable. Texas A&M's not unbeatable. Like there is at least a 3, 4, 5% chance that they make a run all the way to the SEC tournament final, which is unbelievable considering the season they've had.
I agree.
All right. Speaking of LSU, anything else as far as conference tournament betting, Jim, that you are in on? Because we talked about this game last night, where to the layperson who's not paying that close attention, seeing LSU favored in that game was like, what? And that's usually a sign that the odds makers are about 3 steps ahead of you, and if you just bet with what they're telling you to bet, you can win more often than not.
That's right.
Do you agree with that?
Yes, and that's why people say, why do you bet lines that don't make sense? If they don't make sense, I mean, why would you be given points like that? Well, I mean, to me, it's exactly what you just said. The lines makers know something that we don't know, or they're more educated than we are. And so if they're telling me, if I go into a game and I think Georgia ought to be about a 4-point favorite, which is what I would have thought last night, and LSU's the 3-point favorite, I'm like, whoa. They know way more than I do. Doesn't make sense. Just like the Pelicans. Why the Pelicans were one of my best bets yesterday, and I put a chunk on the Pelicans money line. I thought it should have been Dallas minus 5.5, minus 6.5. I didn't know how hurt Doncic was, and it turns out he ended up having to leave in the third quarter. But I just thought that was a weird line, and I bet the Pels money line and hit it. And had I seen the LSU line and noticed it, I didn't notice it soon enough, I would have bet on LSU. So these are things to watch out for throughout, I think, this tournament. And I think the lines makers will tell you throughout a tournament, you may have a game where there's a 4 playing a 13, and the 4 is only like a 3.5-point favorite or a 4.5-point favorite. And you're like, whoa, that doesn't make sense to me. Maybe there's your upset alert. So keep your eyes on things like that. That's things that I certainly will be looking at throughout that especially the first 2 rounds.
Sure. So I would look out for that the rest of this weekend as well. In fact, I've been kind of keeping track of it. Lower seeded teams in conference tournaments that are favored over the higher seeded team, meaning the team that finished better in the conference standings, are, I believe, 22-12 straight up. Now, having said that, they're only 17, 16-1 against the spread. So it's not been super profitable to bet against the spread, but there is usually a reason that lower seeded team that finished behind in the conference standings is favored in that game. So keep an eye out for those situations.
Maybe you bet it live. You wait and see how it starts.
Yeah, and the other part of that is not all of those bets are created equal. Like I was just trying to get something I could tabulate fairly quickly, so I looked at lower seed. Sometimes the 10 seed finished with the same conference record as the 7 seed.
Right.
Okay, well, it's not going to be a surprise that they're favored. So look at the records as well. If there was a 3 or 4 game difference in their conference record, well, now maybe they're like LSU and Georgia. Now maybe there's a reason that team is favored. So keep an eye out for that as we go into March Madness. Speaking of LSU, they have started spring football practice as well. And the number one storyline is, look, Jaden Daniels had a tremendous season last year. He was a fringe Heisman candidate for a while. As you see there, he's 16-1 to win next year's Heisman. But then in the SEC championship game, he had to leave with an injury. In comes Garrett Nussmeier, who throws for almost 400 yards in a half against Georgia. And we all saw how good Georgia was. Now, granted, Georgia had a big lead in the game, so they were probably playing a little softer and all that kind of stuff. But it's almost started like this little seed in some people's minds that Garrett Nussmeier maybe he should be the starter over Jaden Daniels. I don't see it. I think it. But our Wilson Alexander talked to Brian Kelly about this when spring practice opened. And Brian Kelly, he said, he did not shut the door on it. He said, Jaden Daniels is our number one starter, but it's an open competition because if Garrett really blows us away, I never want to shut the door on that. So he kind of left the door open a crack, Jim.
Barring injury, anyone who wants to bet on Garrett Nussmeier to be the starting quarterback in the season opener for LSU, I'm taking 20-1 bets. Just email me and I'll give you my cell number. I know that's probably not legal, but I don't care. Do it.
Look, we'll worry about that part later.
20-1.
My take on this is this. Brian Kelly, in the age of the transfer portal, doesn't want to lose either of these guys because Jaden Daniels could get hurt. He's a running quarterback. Running quarterbacks get hurt all the time. He got hurt last year. Like, it happens. Right. So you don't want to lose either one of them to transfer. So you don't want to slam the door on Garrett Nussmeier and say, no, there's no way you're starting. I don't care how good you were in the SEC championship game because Jaden Daniels is that much better. You say that to Garrett Nussmeier, you might risk him transferring out as soon as spring practice is over. There's another, I think, 2-week window in April for where the portal is open like that. So what you want is for both of these guys to enter fall practice, specifically Nussmeier, to enter fall practice, thinking he still has a chance to win the job, and then you've got yourself a quality backup. Because they already lost one quarterback, right?
Jaden Daniels is the starting quarterback for LSU. Next topic.
Okay, here's your next topic. Any value on LSU to win the national title at 14-1? It's early to bet, sure. But what do you think of that number?
Well, I think it's a decent number. I think it's about right. So, in other words, I guess if I'm saying it's about right, I guess there's not a ton of value in it. But if you look at the LSU, if you look at the projected win total at 8.5, then that's not really consistent with saying 14-1 is a good number for a national title, right? So I don't think you can bet that. I mean, if LSU's win total was 9.5 and they were plus 1,400, I'd say maybe, but I don't think those two numbers jive. I think that number's jacked up a little bit. I wouldn't touch that right now.
Yeah, I think I need at least 20-1, honestly. And part of that is because of the schedule. Like, LSU overachieved in year one with Brian Kelly. It was very impressive. Does that mean they're going to overachieve again next year? Not necessarily. No. They've still got to play at Alabama. They've still got to play Florida State in Orlando, which is going to be a top 20 team. And then the rest of the SEC slate. Like, look, Texas A&M, you can laugh at what they did last year. They had a down year. They had a terrible year, and they still beat LSU. Now LSU gets them at home, but that's still a difficult game. I just think there's too many landmines for a team with a few question marks still.
Yeah, too early to talk about that. Real quick, if you see Beanie's first message, wanting to know, asking about a bust. Well, the person on this panel who actually is behind the scenes right now, is the only one of us that played college sports, and she thinks that he's a bust. I'm just saying.
Okay. Jim and I both played sports. We were varsity starter material. We are certainly not anything beyond that. But I have always sort of pushed back.
College, so.
Like, let's push back against the notion that you have to play sports.
I agree 100%.
Let's push back against that, because that permeates this industry way too much. You do not have to have played the sport at a professional level.
No, because that's just the first excuse. Then the people that have played, they're former professional players, and they'll say, "Well, you were a bum or whatever." Blah blah blah. Whatever.
That's like saying you don't understand how to critique a movie if you've never acted in a movie. Like right. There's no connection there for me. Unless you played in the Boston Pops, you can't tell me whether you like music or not. Like, come on, get out of here with that. All right, that's just a preliminary rant, okay? And by the way, we did play sports. We're certainly not NBA players. We're out of pocket. You have to play sports from sun up to sundown, from 4 to 17. I was in my driveway. Playing sports.
I played from 4 to 17. Yeah. That doesn't mean it was any good. But
if that doesn't count.
Moving on.
Let's get to our rants, and I'll tell you what I love sports. I love all sports. What I don't like about sports is this trend I'm seeing where we're turning a great sport into a made-for-TV event. And that's what's happened with baseball and some...
Get off of my lawn! Sorry, I couldn't help it.
Some of these rule changes are fine. The pitch clock, from everything I've heard, is fine. Okay? No problem with it. It speeds the game along. It keeps the pace up. All for it. The bigger bases, whatever. I don't really care. I don't think it's going to affect that much. The shift... I'm kind of 50-50 on that. I'm fine with it. The one that kills me is the ghost runner in extra innings. What are we doing? People started the ghost runner in extra innings for slow pitch softball tournaments because they had to finish them up before sundown, since they didn't have lights. And if anybody complained, they said, come on, what's the big deal? It's not like this is Major League Baseball. And now Major League Baseball's doing it. What are we doing with the ghost runner? It's ridiculous. Play the game. Play the game. They introduced it as a pandemic thing to get the players out of the ballpark sooner, which was ridiculous in and of itself. If you were going to catch COVID in the first 3 hours you were at the ballpark, what's another hour? I don't understand that to begin with. But now we're saying it's a permanent change that in the 10th inning on, we're going to put a ghost runner at second base and play this game the way that it has never been played in 100 years. And now news comes out this week, Jim, that golf is doing the same damn thing. They're taking away the cut from their major tournaments, not the majors, that's the wrong word, but from their elevated events next year, like the Players, which is going on this weekend. There's not going to be a cut, which is not golf. It's not professional golf. There's always been a cut. You've always had to show up on Thursday and Friday to get to play the weekend, and now we're pandering to the top players. We're pandering to the TV networks that want the top players on the weekend, and we're actively harming the sports.
My first reaction is, who are making these rules? They're people that have never played sports. Those are the people making these rules. No, I'm just kidding.
TV executives.
They're absolutely... Look, everything that exists in sports today has to do with what TV wants. What time a game is played, what day a team plays another team, whatever. It all comes down to what TV wants. And that's because that's where the money is. And if you don't like it, too bad. They don't care whether you like it or not. They really don't care.
Clearly. Yeah.
As far as your opinions on things, it's funny because you always called me basically the old fart in the room. And you're screaming, get off my lawn right now. I mean, that's what you're saying. Get off my lawn. I mean, I don't like these rules. It's been this way since the beginning of time. Aren't you the one that says, who cares the way it's been? What makes things better? I mean, look, as far as golf goes, I really don't care. And I'm a golf, you know that I'm a huge golf fan. I've got it. It's on my TV right now as we speak, and I'm watching my golfer, Justin Thomas, blow up here. So, I mean, I love golf, but I don't care about the cut line. I'm still going to watch the same way. I'm going to bet it the same way. It doesn't bother me at all. The only thing that bothers me of all that you said, I agree with you 1,000% about the ghost runner. It's ridiculous. It's dumb. But they seem to like it because it speeds up games. You know, I saw Vanderbilt in Evansville played a 17-inning game last night, which
That's
is
fantastic.
That's
awesome.
kind of ridiculous. It's a midweek game, and these kids have to go to school. So I think
I mean, okay, I would actually buy the argument for a Wednesday night game in college more than I would buy. Like, if you go to a major league game and you get 17 innings, that's a once in a lifetime thing. Like, I know you got to be at the ballpark for 5 hours. You can leave if you want to, but to me, that's a cool part of the sport that 1 out of 500 times that might happen. You might get a 17-inning game. Okay, anyway, I'm fine with rule changes.
For a 30-second story that's related.
I'm fine with rule changes. What I'm not fine with is rule changes that make the sport worse.
30-second story, real quick.
Go ahead.
All right, so the Zephyrs are playing. The New Orleans Zephyrs, who played here for 15 years or however long they played here. Tony Pena is the manager. I was working until 1 a.m. on the desk at the Times-Picayune, and when I got off of work, they were still playing, and my friends were there, probably a little inebriated, said, come meet us at the game. I did. It is the 16th inning when I get there. Oh, we're, laughing or whatever. So the 18th inning, Zephyrs got a man on third, and we're screaming, Tony, you got a bunt, Tony! And there's like 8 people in the stadium. Tony, a bunt! So he squeezed bunts. The guy gets thrown out by 10 feet at the plate. He turns around and says, is that good enough for you?
That's fantastic.
It was. Now, we would have never had that had there been a ghost runner on second. So I'm with
That's right. That's right. You're making the game work. Now, don't get me started on bunts, but I suppose in that situation you could.
We were just messing with them. But we didn't leave the stadium until about 3:10 in the morning.
All right, we're going to circle back here for Jim's rant to the Saints. The Saints have 2 draft picks in the top 40, number 29 and number 40, coming up in next month's draft. Now that they have their quarterback, Jim, what should they do with those draft picks?
Oh, it's easy. I've been seeing all these mock drafts about the Saints taking a defensive tackle or this player or that player. Look, forget all the defensive draft picks. The Saints need offense more than they need anything else. I think that was clear to see last year. And beyond all that, now that they have a quarterback, we don't know when or if Alvin Kamara is coming back. We have no clue how long the suspension is going to last and what it's going to entail and what's going to happen with Alvin Kamara. I mean, he may go to jail for all we know. So he's going for a minimum of 6 games, potentially a lot longer than that. And beyond that, he's 30 years old. The Saints need a running back more than they need anybody else, and that's what they ought to be looking at the draft. They don't have any money to get one in free agency. To me, it's 1 running back, 2 wide receiver, because Chris Olave needs some help, and what they have now isn't nearly enough, even if Mike Thomas comes back. And then I think they need to shore up that offensive line because there's not enough depth, and Lord knows they need to protect Derek Carr. So that's 1, 2, 3 in my book. I wouldn't pick a defensive player until earliest the 3rd round, maybe the 4th round. I know they have 2 5th-round picks. You can get defense later in the draft and defensive players that can start for you later on.
Here's my question for you. And obviously we don't know what they're going to do in free agency. They could fill some of these needs in free agencies. Then that changes. If David Onyemata does not re-sign, and he might be too expensive for the Saints to re-sign, you've got Shai Tuttle and nothing at defensive tackle. You got to use one of those first 2 picks on a defensive tackle, don't you? You have to. Who are you going to start?
The problem is right now at running back, you got nothing and nothing. So you're talking about they have nothing beyond Onyemata. They have nothing at running back. And to me, wide receiver is such an important position for this team right now. I understand where you're coming from, Zach. I don't deny that you need help along the front, in the Saints defensive front, and you definitely need more depth there as well. But to me, you got to shore up this offense first and trust that one thing Dennis Allen can do is run a defense, and he's shown that already. The Saints have been in the top 10 for the last 3 years, in the top 11 for the last 4 years, and that's because of Dennis Allen. He can make and that's with losing players, free agents throughout the years. I think he can make things work, and I think we'll see that.
The only thing I will say on that is you're much more likely to find to need a first-round pick to find a starter at defensive tackle than running back. I agree with you. They need a running back. They got Alvin Kamara in the 3rd round, number 67. They've got the 71st pick this year. Who's to say they couldn't? Kenneth Walker was a 2nd-round pick last year. Breece Hall, who I know got hurt, but looked good. He was a 2nd-round pick. You can find a running back later in the draft. Defensive tackle, I think, is a much bigger risk to wait on.
I don't know. I think you gotta get a good one that can start. We'll see. But this certainly will be a topic of conversation. The season 3 premiere of Datitude tomorrow morning at 9:15 a.m. on all these same social media channels. And if you miss it live, Jeff Duncan and I will be live from 9:15 to about 10. We will be. I will add my monologue to start it and my thoughts, and wherever you get your podcast. Datitude, episode number 140 in the season premiere tomorrow morning.
Check that out on a Friday morning, and maybe LSU will still be alive in the SEC tournament. You guys can talk LSU Kentucky. I had a friend, by the way, text me last night at halftime of the Georgia game. LSU was up 12 and said, whatever the money line is on Georgia, bet it. Because LSU fans have lost faith in this team. And
they're not even watching.
By the way, he was almost right. Like, they almost did blow that game, but they survived. So we'll see what happens tonight. I actually think that game will end up close, and so there is live betting opportunity if one team's up big at halftime. I would go the other direction and maybe take the points and see what happens, because I think it winds up close. So Mississippi State plays Alabama in one quarter. It looks like Tennessee, Missouri in the second quarter. Tennessee's finishing off Ole Miss. And so then we'll see about the other two quarterfinals tonight. We will be back on Monday at 4 o'clock. March Madness brackets will be out. We'll talk more NFL free agency, and we'll see what the Pelicans do over the weekend. So until then, everybody, thanks for watching Bayou Bets, and we'll see you next time.